Hello, Brubs. We're back with The World of Keane by Walter Keane. Chapter 25, Art Fraud Exposed in 1967. What do you got, bruv? April 20th, 1967. Michael Grieg, a writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, wrote the following. There is an art fraud ring in the Bay Area. Police have uncovered forgeries of the work of Monet, Picasso, Braque, and Raoul Duffy. I'm not sure how to say it. May 11th, 1967, the San Francisco Chronicle carried a story with the New York byline UPI discovered fraudulent Mag, Modigliani, Chagall, Picasso, and Raoul Dufy paintings. July 2nd, 1967. Another headline. Oil man believes in his art. Arthur Meadows bought some fake Modigliani paintings, but he would not disclose his source. August 13th, 1967, the San Francisco Chronicle carried a United Press International story from London and first aired by the BBC television news service. Headlines exclaimed art found in London, or art fraud in London. The following day, Scotland Yard began an investigation. Having learned of the art forgery scandal and having read the newspaper story several times, I was disturbed. What's up, Ralphs? I thought Margaret might be. Yeah, Margaret's involved. Knowing foreign telephone calls are monitored, I made a special trip to Hawaii to be certain she was not a part of the forgeries and to insist that she destroy all her copies. That's kind of cumbersome, isn't it? Oh, it fell. It fell. All right. Maybe I'll go back to the clock. As described earlier, Margaret learned to paint by copying other artists' work. I had remained adamant about her destroying a finished copy, either by painting over it or by burning it. I continually emphasized that copying was only a means of learning a technique. It must never be an end in itself. I told her that a great art forger uses a magnifying glass to better study the artist's brushstrokes. By so doing, he or she is able to pass the copy off as the original. Only by his technique can one truly copy an original of another painter's work. To see the brushstrokes used, one must view the original painting, not a photograph. In Europe, many valuable paintings left museums on loan, and copies were returned in their places. The El Greco Museum was victimized in this way. Margaret's third husband was earning $300 a month with 9 children to feed. He needed money. On one occasion, he filed a lawsuit against me for money owed to Margaret previously. An investigation revealed that Margaret had received the money as scheduled and had deposited it in a Redwood City private bank account. My certified public accountant, Don Sealer, traced the return check and obtained a photocopy of the deposit slip from her bank. When Margaret's husband's attorney saw the photocopy, a needless lawsuit was canceled. For 2 or 3 years, Margaret painted under her third husband's name. This was a total disaster. No sales, no income. During the same time period, 3 gunmen robbed me in my Woodside home. They tied me up and threatened to kill me if I did not divulge the location of my safe. For fear of death, I showed them. Only Margaret and the Swedish installer of the safe knew where I kept my money. When questioned by the FBI, Margaret admitted that she might have told someone about my safe while she was drinking. What do you got, bruv? She may have told somebody about the safe while she was drinking. Yeah, there we are. Unknown to me, Margaret had become a disciple of the Jehovah's Witness. That's true, she did. In an attempt to bolster her sales, she, Margaret McGuire, reverted to using my highly respected name. I had been out of the United States for several years, only to return regarding the sale of one of my major paintings. I was informed and shocked to learn one of my well-known paintings, painted and copyrighted by me in 1963, was used without my permission in a story to publicize the Jehovah's Witness convention at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, a direct violation of the United States copyright law. I had never anticipated this sort of duplicity from Margaret, and our lengthy property settlement agreement, signed and initialed on every page. Our attorneys had been very exact in spelling out. My copyrighted paintings were listed carefully, as were hers. I signed over her copyrights to her, and she signed over my copyrights to me. A Watchtower writer and Margaret called on San Francisco area newspapers. A degrading story appeared in the Peninsula Times Tribune, July 11th, 1981, in Palo Alto, California. A lawsuit was filed by me. In this photograph taken on a visit to Margaret's studio, a Modigliani photo is in front of my right arm, attached to her easel. The Peninsula Times Tribune made an out-of-court settlement. See this trouble I go through not to break the spine of this book? Over my objection, my attorney insisted I accept it. Shortly afterwards, he had a severe auto accident and was hospitalized. Unable to work, his daughter-in-law partner requested of me a substitution of attorneys in the pending copyright infringement case. My friend Steve Smith informed me he had a great attorney for me, a real fighter. Steve made all the arrangements. The attorney's fee would be a percentage of recovery. What Steve didn't tell me was my new attorney was a big drinker, a man who experiences blackouts. During one of those apparent blackouts, he had not filed some necessary papers with the court. All unknown to me, the defendant's attorneys rushed into court requesting a dismissal with prejudice. The case was dismissed. The case never went to trial. Years later, United States District Court Judge King ruled out prejudice and said the case could have been reinstated. Chapter 26. A long courtship. During our years of courtship, Joan mentioned marriage to me several times. I froze. Oh man, I quickly changed the subject. She continued flying. When I wasn't painting, I would be off with my daughter to Tahiti, Paris, or for a weekend at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Susie and I were making plans to spend the summer in Europe. I had invited Joan to accompany us, but she was unable to adjust her flight schedule accordingly. Her last words, "Don't stay too long." Susan and I left New York in June. SAS's first stop was Copenhagen, where my daughter fell in love with the city. She met her cousins, who insisted on taking her to Hans Christian Andersen's Fairyland, Tivoli Gardens. What an exciting day. Then off to Stockholm, where we saw more relatives and had more fun. I telephoned Dana. She was happily married to a rich Swedish gentleman and living in a suburb. Her husband offered to reimburse me the $1,000 I had given Dana in Hong Kong. Thank you, no. That was between Dana and me. No obligations. All in friendship. Your wife saved my life. Dana chimed in, saying we had saved each other. She admitted that her husband knew the whole story. I queried, everything? She answered emphatically, everything. After Stockholm, Susan and I were off to St. Tropez, or is it San Tropez, the summer retreat of the French. Gonet was there, as were some of the Paris streetwalkers. We had many wonderful French dinners. It was then I discovered Susan was drinking almost a bottle of wine with her dinner each evening. Too much for a young girl of 18, I said. She laughed. Dad, you drink a bottle of wine every night, then go into your Chivas Regal Scotch as we gypsy around the village in the evenings. I'm a big boy. I'm a big girl, 5 feet 8 inches tall, and I'm now 18 years old. Wow, you really are. Why, Susie, you're a lady. I asked you not to grow up too fast. I remember it well, Daddy. After a wonderful summer together in Paris, you were seeing us off at Orly Airport. And that is the last thing you said to me. Several letters and a few telephone calls couldn't bring Joan to join us, even for a long weekend. Our way was in Our stay was in its ninth week when I told Susan that it was time to pack up. Joan hadn't sounded very happy over the telephone. My God, I've left her alone like one of the lost waifs. I had been painting around the world. Through neglect, I am creating one. Did he say 9 weeks? It's like 2.5 months, or over 2 months. The greeting was sad on my arrival in San Francisco. Joan announced she had requested an airline transfer to Seattle and would be leaving soon. Continuing, she said, I want a new life, a home, marriage, and children. I responded, we have a child. Your child, she replied. I love Susie, and she loves me. We get on well together, but as my sister would say, Buster, I want children of my own. Joan carried out her plan of moving to a beautiful cottage on a lake outside Seattle. Again, I was busy with my paintings, my two galleries, and my Paris art agent. Within me, however, was the gnawing feeling of emptiness caused by Joan's absence. I knew I must get her back. It was hard to believe that Joan had been away from me over 4 months. I telephoned her. Darling, why am I in such a fever over you? Why? Please come back to me. She replied, is that why? Walter, do you know what you remind me of? You have been impulsive before. You're offbeat, complicated, talented, heartless, wonderful, the quintessential lover, and many more things. You leave your personal brand on all those you touch. Interrupted. There is no telling what I may be driven to. When you went away, my heart went with you. Even my eyes are only half focused when I'm painting. I'm just in a dream about you. I need you. I want you. I can't live without you. Please come back to me. What terms? She asked. Terms? Any terms you want, I replied. You're the dearest, most wicked man I know. Walter, I can only love one man, and that one man is you. When you are ready to marry me, I will return. I'm so much older than you. How can I ask you to marry me? Then she said, if you can't ask me, I'll ask you. I shouted, I love you. I'll marry you. Please. I am on my knees, my bony knees. My darling, my love. Will you give me your hand in marriage? Oh, Walter, you're crazy, and I am crazy in love with you. Yes, yes, yes! I will meet your flight in Seattle tomorrow noon. At the airport, I presented her with the 2.5 carat blue white diamond ring. She was excited. Her first ring, first fiance, first husband. 2 days later, she had to fly to New York. I returned to San Francisco. Joan resigned her job with United Airlines in December 1967. We had fun planning our elaborate Valentine's engagement party for February 14th, 1968. To make it official and to add a bit of notoriety, we invited 60 friends, all of whom attended. Walter Keane announced his engagement to Joan Marie Mervyn. It was Valentine's Day. The wine cellar at Ernie's restaurant. was decorated with roses and filled with friends. Good food and champagne flowed. Many guests asked me the wedding date. When pushed into the corner, I responded that we were still planning the details. I assumed Joan was a happy fiancée. No word was ever uttered of a wedding date. Joan tried to speak to me of marriage. Always I directed the subject to other topics. It almost became her wake up song as she brought our juice, English muffins, with honey and coffee to bed. Finally, she settled down to exotic travel, grand hotels, and restaurants, while the romance floated along the way in our togetherness. I was often out the country. On one of my trips to the Orient, I telephoned to Joan from Tokyo. She responded, "Walter, I've been packing my things. I'm leaving you. Going to Montreal. Goodbye." "Wait," I hollered. "I called to tell you I'm on my way to Bali to do some painting. Will you please fly to Manila and I will meet you there? We will rest up a couple of days, then continue to Bali and get married there." "Bali?" She was bubbling with excitement and joy. "We will get married in Bali?" "Yes, darling. There are $2,700 in my blue cashmere jacket in the bedroom closet. The one you bought for me at Harrods in London. Use the money to buy your tickets to Manila and get some traveler's checks." We met in Manila on schedule. There was a fashion show in progress at the hotel. As much as I dislike bright red on any woman, I bought Joan an exciting red dress. Exciting, he says. We painted and partied in Bali for 3 days. The fourth morning, over coffee, Joan inquired, "Darling, when is the happy day to be?" Laughingly, I said, "Every day with you is a happy day, darling." I had in mind that next Monday would be our wedding day. Secretly, I'd been making some party plans. Bright and early Monday morning, in great excitement, we arrived at the licensing office. The minister was expecting us at his church shortly. Filling out forms and returning them to the gentleman in charge, Joan and I were ecstatic. The gentleman queried her, "Do you have a note from your mother?" Joan replied, "What kind of note?" "Permission for you to marry," he commented. "I'm over 21, sir," he replied. "In Bali, if a girl is under 35 years of age, she must have a note from her mother to marry." With an angry, accusing tone in her voice, Joan turned to me and in great firmness said, "Walter, sounds like you're bailing out again. I'll bet you knew this. Really, darling, I didn't. It's as much a surprise to me as to you." I spoke with the clerk asking permission to telephone Joan's mother in Canada. I offered to call collect or charge the call on my hotel phone to my hotel phone. Anything so that the official could verify Mrs. Mervin's sanction of our marriage. He replied, "I wouldn't know the lady on the telephone was Miss Mervin's mother." "All right. When we are talking to her, I'll ask her to send a fast cable giving her permission." Nothing worked. We were denied the marriage license. Unmarried, we returned to California. Half joking, I said, "I should have called the Vatican." "Walter, it's not funny. I told my family, my friends, now what?" Months passed before Joan announced I'm leaving. We have been going together 4 years. I'm getting older. I want to get married and have a family. She left to visit her family. The days became weeks and soon a month passed. I flew to Vancouver and rented an apartment on English Bay for Joan and me. One evening, while Joan was preparing dinner, I went for a walk on the beach. I sat down on a rock overlooking the bay. The sun was setting. I knew that Vancouver, my mind flashed, was where we would marry. Upon my return to our apartment, I was greeted by Joan's open arms and a kiss. She informed me that dinner would soon be ready. Then she inquired, "Did you did you enjoy the sunset?" "More than you'll ever know." "What does that mean?" My wedding thoughts unraveled. We made plans to marry in 3 weeks in the chapel at the university where Joan had attended college. A few days later, I returned to California while she stayed on, making party preparations. On October 14th, 1969, John and Margaret May and my daughter Susan flew to Vancouver for our wedding. My tailor, Ron Postal, in Beverly Hills made me a wild dark blue tuxedo for the occasion. We carried 6 cases of French champagne, and Margaret May carried the wedding cake. Joan was a stunningly beautiful bride, the most gracious, most exotic, gorgeous face and figure I've ever seen. She was radiant, almost generating her own light. Joan Marie, do you take this man for your husband? She smiled and said, yes. Words almost failed me, I was so full of joy. Never had I known such a happy moment. This lovely lady was marrying me. Moments later came the blessed words, you are man and wife. My eyes were moist. My heart called out, my dear, beautiful wife, I love you. When we were alone, I thanked her for being so patient and not giving up. I realized she could have had any man she wanted. In our bed, on our wedding night, I said, you have bestowed on me the right to call you mine. I wish the sun would never come up again and we could be in each other's arms like this forever. The next day, our party returned to California. Joan and I rested a few days in my woodside country home, swimming, sunning, drinking, and loving. Soon we were off to Paris. During dinner one evening, a French friend asked, what was the big rush into marriage, Walter? You only went together 5 years. I responded, I just couldn't resist. Sitting up sternly, Joan interjected, 5 years too long. We could have 3 children by now. 3, I exclaimed. 2, a boy and a girl. I already have their names picked out. Now, no comment. The following day, while we were having lunch at Montmartre, a beautiful French girl came up to our table and spoke to me. Mon chéri, Walter, where have you been? I introduced her to Joan, saying we had just been married. Married, she shouted. Why? Soon the girl walked on. Joan inquired, and who was that gorgeous lady? With a smile, I responded, a filet de joie. No, Joan replied, not her, Walter. A filet de joie is a woman who engages in sexual intercourse for payment. Right, my darling, she is a prostitute, a streetwalker, a lady of the evening. I told you when I painted on the streets of Paris, I became acquainted with many of the girls working the street. Oh, she was lovely, Joan commented. Many are in the beginning, I replied. That was a quick end to the chapter. Chapter 27. A day at the Vatican. The most important, exciting day of Joan's life was in the making. One morning, with all her earthly charm, she hugged me and said, my darling Walter, you think you can do almost anything. A bit startled, I responded with a kiss. Yes, I suppose so, if I put my mind to it. As I am a good Catholic girl, and since we are in Rome, I would greatly appreciate having an audience with the Pope. Wow, the President of the United States is one thing. The Pope? Some days later, Joan and I were strolling the boulevards of Rome. I spotted an empty table at a sidewalk cafe. I looked at my watch, 10:30, and calculated. We had time for a quick coffee. Shortly after, I beckoned, dear one, let's catch that taxi at the corner. I ran ahead. By the time Joan caught up, I had directed the driver to the private entrance at the Vatican with haste. Where are we going? She asked. In a moment you will know. Just keep your fingers crossed. Reaching into my inside coat pocket, I removed a black scarf. Put it on, Joan, I advised. 16 foreign dignitaries were slowly walking into the Sistine Chapel. We made 18. Moments later, the Pope appeared before us. For Joan, he was the most perfect person alive. Readily stirred by her sensitive feeling, her head not rose skyward as though seeing God for the first time and being at one with him. The Pope quietly spoke a few words and blessed us. There was great emotion in Joan's face. Her eyes searched as if appealing for help. My mind heard from hers. I owe him more than my life. I felt her penetrating warmth as we slowly left the chapel. Pausing, she took my hand in hers, looking directly in my eyes with the same love she reflected in the chapel. Oh, Walter, thank you. I'll never ask. If you did, I wouldn't tell. During dinner, Joan said, "You're staring. After today, I feel we are seeing each other for the first time. There was a moment during your audience I speak with God." She looked at me. Only her eyes were speaking to me. Soon, from her lips flowed the words, i.e., I did speak with him. Where always before I lived on faith, today I was at his side in heaven. That night, Joan made one of her rare telephone calls to her parents, saying, "A few days ago I casually mentioned to Walter my deepest dream of one day having an audience with the Pope." With great joy, nearly shouting, "Today it happened." The excitement, the spiritual fulfillment was the most meaningful experience I have ever encountered in my life. Somehow I hoped on that day at the Vatican, my omnipresent grandmother had been a witness. She would have appreciated that spiritual moment when Joan transcended the immediacy of the environment. From this moment, I could communicate better with Joan. Her oneness with the Pope paralleled the spirit and union I had always felt with my grandmother. 28. A dip into culture. It's kind of a long one, relatively speaking. Get the fuck under there, would you? Why? Why are you menacing me? You piece of garbage. Chapter 28. A dip in the culture. Their first night in San Francisco, two well dressed young ladies walked into my art gallery. I greeted them with a welcoming smile. "How elegant you look. Where did you come from?" "We just graduated from Smith. Our trip to San Francisco is a gift from our parents. We majored in art and know all about your paintings. You are Mr. Keane. You have been on television." "Yes, I am Walter Keane. Who may you two lovely ladies be?" "I'm Nancy Campbell. She is Susan Dort, my best friend. Art majors. Would you like a job working in my gallery?" The girls looked at each other, then at me. Susan spoke for them both. "We will think about it." They walked about the gallery, carefully studying my paintings, and quickly returned to the desk. Nancy said, "Mr. Keene, we would be happy to work for you." "Wonderful," I replied. "The gallery opens at noon and closes at 1 a.m. Arrange the gallery work schedule to please yourselves. One of you can be the day manager, the other the night manager." Nancy turned to Susan and said, "You will work the night shift." The girls were knowledgeable in the world of art and contributed to the success of the gallery. Nancy later worked in my Sausalito gallery while Susan ran the San Francisco arena. Susan had a charm and gracious sophistication about her. She was good at sales and handled the large evening crowds well. Susan did not like the low life that had been steadily moving into North Beach. The influx of topless dance bars and accompanying rowdy crowds foretold the decline of this beautiful Latin quarter. Although this saddened her, Susan learned to tolerate the changes. She wasn't snobbish, she was just realistic about the eventual decadence of the area. While the strippers and dope pushers were contained on Pacific Avenue in the international settlement, North Beach had an intellectual atmosphere with its writers, poets, and painters who created a real bohemian quarter like those found in many other cities. What slowly happened in this area of San Francisco exemplifies why world leaders like French President de Gaulle expelled NATO from Paris. Diplomats and highly paid military personnel with large staffs and expense accounts attract pickpocket rings, gamblers, dope pushers, and whores. De Gaulle loved his country and would not facilitate the establishment of an American Coney Island or a cheap North Beach on French soil. With great foresight, he realized that once a large city is uncontrolled, it is nearly impossible to reclaim. One evening, Susan telephoned me from the North Beach Gallery to report that a gentleman from Connecticut was interested in meeting me and buying an original painting of mine. Arrangements were made to meet him. The next day, straight up at noon, Mr. Hornblow walked into the Keane Gallery at 494 Broadway in San Francisco as scheduled. Soon I followed. An hour was spent in the gallery and my studio, where we had a cocktail and where Mr. Hornblow laid one out $4,100 bills. He then became the owner of a Walter Keane original. I autographed it on the back to the buyer. Later, Mr. Hornblow and I descended the stairs to Vanessa's. We were given the royal welcome by my good friend and maitre d' Modesto. He had my table all set with a bottle of Montrachet wine and a bucket of ice. Modesto made sure that my Chivas Regal was served to me in a long-stemmed wine glass. Bing, the Chinese busboy, had my table set with sourdough bread and all the Italian goodies. Bing had the charm and energy of three men. The head chef, Mario, came to our table to welcome me and my guest, and to tell me he would prepare a special surprise for us. Mario called me his artist friend, and we had many happy days eating together. Once at his home, and on several occasions in my country home. He cooked for me and my dinner guests. After a scrumptious meal, Mr. Hornblow asked if I could spare the time to show him a bit of North Beach. Laughingly, I commented, North Beach doesn't come alive until nightfall. However, on Upper Grant Avenue, my friend Connie Smith has the Miss Smith's tea room. Mr. Hornblow replied, and after that, whiskey and wine. One beverage I do not need is tea. With a smile, I reported Connie's tea room is a bar, only the name was tea room. Connie welcomed us and we were sat at a small table. It was one of those rare hot days for the city. I removed my jacket, draping it over the back of my chair and leaning back against it. We spent a few hours in Connie's, listening to her wild stories. Mr. Hornblow nudged me and said, Mr. Keane, there are only girls in here. Look, those two are kissing. I couldn't help laughing and said, Sir, at 5 p.m. around the corner is the paper doll. It is for the boys. Mr. Hornblow asked if we could drive near the water so he could get a good view of the Golden Gate Bridge. Be better than that, I replied. I will drive you across the bridge and show you Sausalito and my studio on my barge there. With that, we were on our way. The first bar we found open was the Glad Hand, an artist's hangout. We stopped for a quick one, greeted some artist friends, and headed to the no-name bar for more drinks with more friends. After a quick visit to my barge, we ended up at Sally Stanford's. Sally had 4 of my originals on exhibit in a small sitting room off her famous bar and restaurant. She had once been of San Francisco and years later was elected mayor of Sausalito. I was having a quiet talk with Sally when Mr. Hornblow came over to stand quietly beside me. I looked at him and asked, "Is everything all right?" He rejoiced, "Everything is wonderful. Do you suppose we could take a walk along the water and watch the sunset?" Ugh. Wishing to show him the best of San Francisco, I agreed. As we were strolling along the waterfront, a terrible realization hit me. Oh my God, my coat, the $4,000 I had left it draped on the chair at Connie's tea room. Over the bridge and back on Upper Grant and all the traffic parking double, I asked Mr. Hornblow to wait in the car. I walked back into Connie's, where a big, fat, sweaty man was leaning against my coat. I put my hand gently on his massive shoulder and said, "Sir, may I have my coat?" He leaned forward. The coat was wet from his sweat. Turning from the table to walk outside, I slipped my hand in the inside coat pocket. The envelope was there with a rubber band around it. There was the $4,000. North Beach was an artist's paradise in those wonderful days. Besides the likable Connie Smith, there were the local beatniks. Jack Kerouac, William Sarian, Bob Scobies, Bert Bales, and many unconventional individuals. They were all friends. I drank with them on many occasions and and had some of the really good times of my life. In North Beach, we rubbed shoulders with the governor, Edmund Pat Brown, and the great attorneys Jack Ehrlich and Melvin Belly. I saw other friends too, a brilliant attorney, Bruce Walkup, and his beautiful wife, Betty. Bruce and Betty had bought several of my paintings in my early years when I needed the money. He was a gentleman, always paid the full asking price, and always picked up the tab for my drinks and dinner in Venice's, and on one occasion in London. Every Christmas season, Belly would throw a party for the Wall Street boys and bankers of the West. If you did not have a girl on your arm when you arrived, you certainly had one when you left. Dozens of the gorgeous secretaries of Montgomery Street were always there. Belly's parties were the talk of the town. His office decor was something fit for a king or his lady the queen. Near Miss Smith's tea room in North Beach, my friend Gene Wright had a studio. Gene is one of the great photographers and often took publicity pictures and photographed my paintings to send to my agents around the world. One day, Gene dropped by my studio to ask if I had heard that Connie had been sent to the penitentiary for 1 to 3 years. I was shocked. For what reason? Gene reported, seems the charge was concealing stolen property. Big-hearted Connie let someone store 11 television sets in her back storeroom. Turned out they were hot, stolen. A year passed and I got a call from Sally Stanford inviting me to a party. She had 5 cars and a jazz group. She had 5 cars and a jazz group going to San Francisco or San Quentin prison to greet Connie Smith on her release. Will you join in? Asked Sally. Sally threw an all-day, all-night party welcoming Connie back to the good life. One day, shortly after the party, I met Connie at Venice's for lunch. As we were downing our second bottle of wine, I asked her what plans she had for the future. Connie said she had an idea for a new business. However, she needed $2,000 cash with the rest on credit. Connie, have another glass of wine and I'll be back in 5 minutes. Out the door, I went to the Bank of America at the corner of Columbus and Broadway. I withdrew $2,000 in cash and put it in an envelope and returned to Venice's and handed the envelope to Connie. She opened it and said, "Walter, you are one hell of a guy. Do you have something you want me to sign?" I replied, "Gentleman's agreement. You pay it back when you can." This young, strong, rugged, big boss lesbian put out her hand and said, "Walter, I don't know how to thank you." I reached across the table with a little touch to her shoulder and said, "We could go to bed." We both laughed and went on our separate ways. Upon my return from abroad, about a year later, I learned that Connie's new business had failed. No one knew where she was. Then one day in the gallery, mall, in the gallery mail, Susan Dort said, "Walter, here is a check for you from a steamship company in the amount of $130. I put it in a drawer, intending to telephone the steamship company and inquire. A month passed, and Susan advised me that another 130 had arrived. With that, I telephoned the steamship company. Shortly, the treasurer called me back to report that an employee who signed on one of their freighters as a cook has given us instructions to send you her monthly check. I asked, who was this person? He answered, Connie Smith. I hung up the phone. I told Susan what I had learned. She didn't have to do it, I stated. Susan said, that is her way. That is her way. All right. Almost to page 200, but I'm stopping here because my eyeballs hurt. That's all, bro. That's all.